Okay, this is one of the most famous monuments we have here in Christchurch Cathedral. It's the monument known as Strongbow's tomb. And I say known as for reasons that I'll go into in a minute. Strongbow was, of course, a Cambro-Norman, and he was the Earl of Pembroke, a title he inherited from his father. But unfortunately, this title was taken away from him by Henry II of England, so he had considerably fewer lands than he did when he was born. And around about the same time, a man called Dermot MacMurrough, who was the King of Leinster, had his title taken away from him as well. Now, Dermot MacMurrough wasn't particularly liked by the other kings and the High King of Ireland, Rory O'Connor, because he had abducted Tiernan O'Rourke, who was the King of Breffni's wife. Now, whether or not this woman wanted to be abducted or not, of course, is a different story. And he had obviously had his lands taken away from him, and he came to England to talk to Henry II in order to get some men together in England to come and help him fight to regain his lands in Leinster. And he was introduced to Strongbow, who was keen to come and fight because obviously he wanted to win some lands and some glory in Ireland as well. So what happened was Strongbow arranged for a big army to come over. They arrived in 1169 and immediately took Wexford. Didn't take them very long at all. And then he arrived in 1170 and they took Waterford and they marched on Dublin, and they took Dublin very, very easily as well. So Strongbow was obviously a Norman, and they were fantastic church builders. And the old Viking cathedral that had been here since around about 1030 was possibly made of wood. In any case, it wasn't a fantastic building in their standards, so they decided to take it down and rebuild a new cathedral in the Norman style from about 1170 onwards. And Strongbow was very, very instrumental in the rebuilding of the cathedral, and thus his body was buried in the cathedral somewhere, we think around about the south aisle, and there was a tomb erected to him. Unfortunately, in 1562, the old vaulted ceiling that the Normans, to be fair, had built themselves had become too heavy for the walls to hold it up, so it fell in, and this wall fell in on the south side, and the west end of the cathedral down there fell in as well. And unfortunately, the tomb of Strongbow was destroyed during that fall. But however, it was decided that it was very important to replace the tomb of Strongbow, not just because he was very important in the rebuilding of the cathedral, but because if you were a Dubliner at the time and you had an oath to swear, you would bring the person swearing the oath to Strongbow's tomb, and they would swear it here, and apparently that meant that they had to do what they said they would do. So we can only imagine that all of the lawless Dubliners were trying to wriggle out of their contracts, and they had to bring the tomb back to make sure that they did what they said they were going to do. Beside the tomb is a little fragment of a monument. Now, we're not really sure what this is or whether it's even related to Strongbow's tomb at all. Some people say that it might be his daughter or his wife. There is a story going round, a bit of an urban legend, that he cut one of his sons in half for cowardice in battle, but we're not entirely sure which came first, really, the monument or the story. Some people reckon it might have been some mischievous person in the cathedral that came up with that story in the first place. It could be some completely unrelated monument that was just put there because it looked a bit like Strongbow, or deliberately to confuse us for centuries, which is exactly what it's done.